I remember this one property in West Seattle that I remember like buying at 100 something thousand as a foreclosure, and we sold it for 330. And I thought that like the people buying it were like psychotic, like how, because they bid it up. That house is like 1.1 right now. And I'm like, these idiots bought this thing for 331. Like I remember thinking that, right? I'm the idiot for selling this.
Welcome to the 0 to 100 podcast show, where our focus is buy and hold cash flow real estate. Our guest today, Tarl Yarber, considers himself a recovering house flipper. And I can't wait to get into this because we sometimes talk shit about house flipping, but I know Tarl has flipped over 700 single family residential properties. So I want to get in. And you've been doing this for 10 years.
No, longer than that.
Longer than 10 years?
Technically, I started in 2005, like technically, but then I went full time in 2010. So
we'll call it 20 years. Tarl's also the CEO and founder of Fixated Events, Fixated Capital, Fixated Funding, and the Limitless Expo, which I have gone to, and it's truly one of my favorite events. Tarl Yarber, welcome to the 0 to 100 podcast show.
What's up, guys? Thanks for having me.
You talk about if you equate house flipping to like an addiction, then man, you were cracked the hell out for a long time. But yeah, I'm assuming you've had a tremendous amount of success and learned a ton, which we want to dig into. And you're actually broadcasting right now out of Idaho, right? Because I'm always like, where's Tarl? Tarl's like, I know you were in Arizona, then maybe it was Maui for a while, and then you're in Seattle, and now you're hanging out in Idaho.
Yeah, I live outside of Austin, but like now and then. But I'm actually in Brandon Turner's basement in his Coeur d'Alene house right now in their theater room. Because every 4th of July, him and I bring our families together for the lake here. So this is our 4th year that we're doing that. And
who's Brandon Turner? Who's that?
He's a really bad guy, bad at jiu-jitsu, like bet him on the mats.
It's funny that you mentioned that. I actually wrote a question down. That's my first question. Can you beat Brandon Turner at jiu-jitsu?
Yes. That's not even a joke.
He's not. He's not good.
Well, him and I for a year, like legitimately a year in Maui, 3 days a week, did jiu-jitsu together. And at that point, I still could beat him, but he was, he was there, like he was getting there with me and stuff. I just had a leg up on him on it. But then I left Maui and I kept doing it and he didn't. So now I have 2 years on him.
So he's lost it.
Yes. Plus I'm co-owner of a jiu-jitsu academy now. Like all that stuff. Yeah. So yes, I definitely am way.
I actually just got back from the UFC fights yesterday in Las Vegas with Brandon. He admitted that he has not been training jiu-jitsu at all. So yes. I would put my money on Tarl. But this is not the Brandon Turner jiu-jitsu show. We brought Tarl. It can be. It could be, but we don't want to bore our listeners. So Tarl, I'm curious more kind of your backstory. I mean, you've flipped well over 600 homes, maybe a lot more by now. But how did you get into real estate? Like, let's go back to younger Tarl. Like, why real estate? What got you in? Where'd you catch that bug of like, hey, I should be investing in real estate?
Yeah, good question. So I was 17 years old and I was driving on a freeway and I heard somebody talk about Rich Dad Poor Dad for the first time. And so it was actually the radio host was somebody I listened to all the time. And I immediately drove to Barnes and Noble and bought that book. And kids, Barnes and Noble is a place that you can physically go to buy books.
And books are these paper things that you actually flip and read. Okay, go ahead.
That's right. So did that. Used to be the only place to buy books. And then read that and I grew up as the way I like to explain it, it's like upper lower class. Right. So, we weren't quite middle class, right? We would always float between low middle class and upper low class was like our constant, floating around as a family growing up. And so it was the first thing I ever read or ever heard at all, anything about how rich people think about money differently and entrepreneurs think about money differently than us middle class and low income people or whatever. And it completely changed the trajectory of my life.
What year was that, Trey?
That was 2002.
So you and I have a very similar timeline. I also read Rich Dad Poor Dad in 2002. It was actually the first book I ever read in my life, cover to cover, word for word, because I never read a book all through school. And I also bought my first property in 2005. So what happened from 2000? I mean, you obviously are an action taker. You heard this on the radio. You went and bought the book immediately. what happened from 2002 to 2005 when you bought your first property?
Well, I wholesaled my first property, and then in 2005. Reading that book changed the trajectory of like I was going to go to school to get my mechanical engineering, certain degree so that I can become a mechanical engineer because I heard they made like $45,000 a year, and so I wanted to do that.
Lottery, man.
Right? And I was good at engineering, so I'm more of a detailed kind of mentality guy. And then that book threw me for a loop, and then I didn't know what to do, and I was like, maybe I shouldn't go to college. I know I'll go join the military prior to anything else, and then while I'm in the military, I can then figure out what I want to do post-military or whatever, like kind of a thing. And so I went through a whole bunch of stuff to get like what I wanted to figure out what I wanted to do in the military. And then my dad found out, and my dad was prior, and he wanted me to go to college. So he then sold me on the concept of going to get my degree to become an officer in the military instead, right? And he told me about ROTC, which I never heard. I never really paid attention to. He saw that in high school, you see the junior ROTC, and I'm like, I don't know what they're doing, whatever. But so I found out, you go to ROTC while you're going to college, and then once you get your degree, you then become an officer, second lieutenant. The way he sold me is because I was super into like this Z06 Corvette at the time, and I really, really wanted those before I was 25. And he's like, well, if you become an officer, he was a car salesman. If you become an officer, the military pretty much will guarantee that you'll pay your car payment back. So therefore, you can get a Z06 Corvette in your 20s. If you
Man, he was selling you hard.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Like, it's kind of funny to think that like that's actually what motivated me to go.
That's actually why college, that's why Mitch became an officer as well.
That and free college, but hey,
yeah. So, but I never became an officer. Just so you know, I did forget going straight active duty. I was going to do my choice was PJ. I was going to do pararescue. That's what I wanted to do. And so my dad convinced me to go to ROTC instead. I did that for 3 years, and so that was going to be my focus. And then by the third year, I was going to grad. I was on my junior year. I'd already went through.
It's like the boot camp of ROTC, right? Yeah,
like the summer training and
Mitch knows probably
6 weeks. All that stuff.
I actually can't remember the name either. I was just trying to think about it because I was a ROTC guy. I'm like,
it was called boot camp. Gabe and I went to boot camp.
We were managing for our country. Okay, you just relax.
I didn't go to boot camp. I went to infantry basic training.
It's called field training, is what they call it. I remember that. Yeah. And then Robert Kiyosaki. So this is what I was doing. I was going to go do that. And the whole time I'm reading these books, doing whatever. I'm buying any book that Robert Kiyosaki was putting out. I was buying and reading and talking about it, do whatever. And then he was speaking in 2005 at a conference down in LA. This is in Sacramento where I was at the time. A conference in Los Angeles. So it was put on by the Learning Annex. This is, of course, now 2005. Not everybody knows what was going on back then, but like everybody was getting into real estate. Everybody was over to that stuff. Like your barista was your realtor and your mortgage broker. Like everybody was in real estate back then, and or wanting to, especially by 2006. And so I go down to the Learning Annex thing, which was called the Real Wealth Expo at the time. They had Donald Trump as a keynote speaker. They had Robert Kiyosaki there. They had Russell. Anyways, so they had Tony Robbins. They had a bunch of people. They had all the A-listers that you could ever think of there. And it's the first time I went to a sell-a-thon. So I go down there. It's $99 ticket, right, for a 3-day event with Donald Trump in a keynote and all this stuff. I went there because Kiyosaki was like a speaker, right? So that's the only reason why I went. And I'm just blown away. I'm 20 years old, right? And everything's just crazy. And in between all the speakers, they bring out the seminar sellers, right? So you get all the big keynote. This is the secret, guys, right? If you see a $99 ticket out there for a 3-day celebrity fest conference, they're selling you something when you get there, right? That's how they make their money.
You might be asked to run to the back of the classroom before the next higher priced item sells out.
Correct, which is what happened. So this guy comes up on stage, and he's Marshall Silver. He's actually a good friend of mine, very, very good friend of mine this today. But he sold a course called The Turning Point, which was a $1,500 seminar. The Turning Point has nothing to do with real estate. It had to do with like Tony Robbins type stuff, like subconscious reprogramming, how to become a millionaire, thinking, like all that stuff like that. And he was such a good closer that I stood up, ran to the back of the room, and put my charge card, American Express charge card, down and bought it. And it was like buying that course changed my entire life. Not the course, buying the course, because I didn't have $1,500, right? It was $1,495 or whatever it was. It was a 30-day charge card, American Express. So technically they extended it to 60 for me, but I didn't have that money, right? So that meant I had 30 days to pay this thing. And college student, broke. I worked full time at Sears too. Did the cadet stuff, which they, don't pay you anything for that really. So it was crazy. So that was the most reckless thing I'd ever done in my entire life financially, right at that moment, because I was very like conservative with my money. They then, I looked at the ballot, the speaker lineup, and they had a seminar breakout that was called How to Turn $10 into $10,000 in 30 days or less.
And you're like, I better do this so I can pay for the course.
1,000%. That was my thought, right? Was like, I need to go see this because I have 30 days to pay for this charge card, right? I'm sorry, this $1,500 thing from Marshall. And I went to it. I'm not gonna say the name publicly because she still sells stuff. And it was literally this lady who was just like the worst accent in the world, had an overhead projector, and all she was doing was showing overheads of checks that she made wholesaling real estate. That was her entire so signing contracts, right? And explain what a signing contract was, and then she just would show like, here's a $10,000 check, here's a $20,000 check, here's a $200,000 check, here's $100. That's all the sales pitch was overhead projectors of checks.
Were you like, this is bullshit, or were you like, hell yeah, I'm going to be cashing these checks in 30 days? What was your thought process in that seminar?
I am absolutely not naive, right? Like with this stuff. So I'm very skeptical. I'm pessimistic mentality. But I was also very eager to make money at the same time. So I waited out. It was $900, right? So it was only books and CDs. That's it. There's only books and CDs, no course, no nothing. Just books and CDs, no seminars. It was $900. I had $3,000 limit on my charge card. So I'm like, all right, cool. I'm good on this.
I'm going for it.
I'm going to make, I'm a hard ass worker, right?
That's awesome.
So I knew I would do whatever that thing said, right? Whatever it was. So, and I'm already, burst the bubble, kind of like my recklessness financially at that time. So I bought it, right? And the second that, I immediately, that day, pretty much that night, I was at a Starbucks already with the CDs out on that thing, already with the books out. And spoiler alert, apparently to wholesaling real estate, you're supposed to have money for direct marketing and all this other stuff, which I didn't have. And I'm like, wait, that's not as easy as she said it was. And so I had to do the next hardest thing, which was like door knock and all that stuff, which I was absolutely terrified of. And
Tarl, I want to pause you a second because I have a question. I mean, you say, hey, I was reckless in this time, but up until then, you were always conservative with your money. But I'm also curious because there's a lot of people that, they know of Rich Dad Poor Dad, they've read Rich Dad Poor Dad, or they go to one of those seminars, the free ones or the $100 ones, or they even pay for a $2,500 course, but they never do anything with it. So we talk a lot about taking action. I mean, you immediately took action. You bought the book, you read all the other books in the Rich Dad series, you went to the seminar, you went to the courses, you said you went to Starbucks right away and immediately, and you're listening to the CDs. Like, why is it that, why do you think some people have that in them where they're just like, they're action takers and some don't? Like, because there's probably a lot of other people that also bought that same course and probably never listened to one CD.
Before I answer that, I'll say this. They had I think it was like 3 or 4 months later, they had a follow-up thing. It was a 1 day on short sales. So the lady that did the wholesale thing, the assignment contracts, they had it was something like 3 or 4 months later. I think it was about 4 months. They did a 1 day for short sales, right? And anybody that bought the program can go to it. And there was like 300 people in this room. And I remember going to it. And here I am, still 20 years old, almost 21, but at the time. And she asked the question, how many of you guys have assigned a property yet since buying it? And I'm so naive at this thing. I'm thinking I am the smallest little ant in this entire room. There was like me and like 2 other people raised their hand. And it was like, what? I remember being totally blown away by that.
Like, you thought it was crazy that nobody else took action.
Yeah, and I think I'm losing. My finances were messed up by then, right? Because I quit my job and was already dropping out of college by then. But spoiler, I never became an officer because I dropped out of college after buying this course and stuff, by the way. So just to put a bow on that, I never actually served. So I dropped out. So
well, that's why you're called the 1%, right? Because realistically, people, they make 1% this sort of like derogatory term. It's like, in my mind, like 1% of the people that actually take action, like maybe 1% of the room raise their hand, if that.
It blew me away. Like, I didn't understand. Like, Like, why wouldn't you have? Like, that's my attempt. Like, you bought it, go do it. Like, I was also overly obsessed.
It's easy to buy a course. It's harder to go knock on a door and stare down the barrel of a shotgun, maybe.
Yes, today I understand that. But back then.
There's also something to be said about like, I don't know what it is, but I hear a lot of people talk about this where it's like they like spend their last dollar or dollars they don't have. And then it means that much more to them. Where they're like, I put everything into it. Like it's all or nothing. And then they like believe the content, because I think actually most courses and like seminars, I'm not going to say they're all good, but like there's usually like some content there that you can take away and benefit. And when you burn the boats and believe it, it's like, I don't know.
I really want to hear how you got in that first deal though, because you're in Starbucks. You've just found out you got to go knock on doors. Mitch has done some door knocking.
Oh my God.
So yeah, that's terrifying. That's like, so what happened? Like, how did you get that first deal and contract?
Door knocking. Well, so I'll tell you guys the short version. Basically, like this is pre like find anything out online. They had foreclosure.com and that was it back then. It was $50 a month or $100 a month. I did not have that. I think it was like $100. So I didn't have that. So you couldn't like look up any foreclosures or NODs, notice of defaults. Couldn't look up any of that stuff. So I had to go to the county recorders, right, in Sacramento, and they would and every day they'd have a binder with a fresh page on top with anybody that got a notice of default that day, right? And that's the only way to find out, other than paying for foreclosure.com, which those people would be at the county recorders with laptops out. And Gabe's nodding his head. I don't know if you remember any of this stuff, but like, they'd be typing.
I just heard this like story so many times. You're like competing with the people that you're.
Yeah, there's people there, data entry people inputting the stuff right there, and then they would upload it to foreclosure.com by plugging it into a laptop or an Ethernet cable, which is what you had to do back then. So, but anyways, like you pull that out, and I'd have to go research the NODs, find the addresses, dig into that. So I got really good at reading all that stuff, and then I would get a list of people and I'd go door knock. And to say it was easy is absolutely not true. Like the first couple months was like straight up terrifying, horrendous. Nobody supported me at all, but one guy. His name's Gabe Bettis, who was my best friend at the time. He was the only person. Like without him, I would have quit basically, because I had at least one pillar to like hold on to. That he eventually, my first door that I knocked on, he went with me. Right, that's because I was so scared. Like I would actually drive to the property, see there's no car there, and be like, oh, they're not there, and I drive away, right? Like, or I would
like, oh, thank God, I gotta get out of here.
Like, and then I would like get out of the car. This is actually driving 30 minutes across town or 40 minutes across town and still not knocking on the door, right? Like, so this is where the action did not happen, right? It's easier to go read the books and listen to CDs than actually like, and go to the county recorders and look up data than it is to actually go like talk to these scary people. And then, and eventually I would like get out of the car, walk to the driveway, walk out of the driveway, and then like go back into my car. I did all that stuff, dude. Like I cried in my car. I remember one night, like leaving to go knock on a door in the afternoon, because I'm like, they're going to be home at night. I know they will be, like after 6 o'clock. I drove across town to go knock on this one door. Saw that there was like 2-3 cars there.
My palms are sweating just listening to you.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Like 2-3 cars in the driveway. Like I know there's people there, and like I wouldn't get out of the car, and I'm like crying like a bitch. Like, and because I'm like, you're such a loser. Like you're never like, I'm stressed out. By then I'm already like in collections with credit cards, by the way. And the extent of paying that shit, I couldn't like, and then, I had to live, I had to eat, I had to pay gas. So anyways, long story short is actually, I didn't get the first deal on my own. The first deal I got actually was another dude that, I met at an REIA event. And I told him what I was doing, and this is why I started meetups later, was like, so I could find me, like the 20-year-old me that's knocking on doors that I'm not going to go do. And I can like get them to go do the hard stuff. And then I can like go buy the deal and give them a piece of like the assignment, right? Which is what happened to me. So basically knocking on the doors, getting a deal. I get an appointment, don't know what to do with that. So I bring this one dude out that I met at REIA. He then like gets it all situated. And then I got $5,000, right? And which went to like not pay that credit card off, by the way. That went to like live. And it wasn't until the third one that I actually paid all my debt off and stuff. But
did you ever get comfortable with knocking on doors?
No.
Or cold calls, or no? Okay.
Cold call I did later, but not till like much later in my life. But I didn't know what skip tracing was. There was no cold calling. Like I had no idea.
I appreciate you sharing all the, the fears and the challenges, because I think it's pretty normal stuff that a lot of investors they go through. They have these fears, and they see people online, they see yourself and other investors making it, and it sounds so easy, right? Like, because often we're rewarded in public for all the hard work and all the challenges that we handle in private. And so I actually really appreciate you sharing that. I've never heard that story from you, but I mean, you obviously didn't stop there. I mean, you wholesaled the deal, you made $5,000, but you've now flipped hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of homes. And you also call yourself a recovering flipper, which I really want to get into, because we're buy and hold guys.
Me too.
Yeah.
Now,
all four of us are buy and hold guys.
Change. It's like an identity, right? Like,
yeah.
Let's get into how how'd you end up getting into flipping? A lot of flipping, and why now are you buying and holding?
Yeah, so the Cliff Notes version is in 2006, I did my third deal. We made it was $100,000 double escrow, and then I never did it again until 2010. So I was like, this sucks. Like, and so I hated every minute of it. Like, I still don't
of wholesaling or flipping,
all of it. So still to this day, middle 2006 to 2010, I didn't touch real estate. So. I got out of it completely. Like, there was 1 millisecond where I like helped a buddy out to get into the business and stuff. And then I like bounced. And so that was about it. And so, because I just had no interest in it. Like, I became actually a financial planner. So what better to learn about finances than a broke 20-year-old kid?
So typical.
But I was actually really good at it. Really good at it, to be honest.
I can see that.
But I also got financial education from it, learned a ton, all that great stuff. So, and in 2010, I moved to Seattle, and then I get reassociated with real estate. And that's a long story. But the short of it was, by 2011, like, it's all I'm doing. And 2012, it's crazy. And then 2013, it gets crazier. This is during like REO, so all the foreclosures, all that stuff. You didn't know there was good deals, right? Like, the biggest message for people, especially today, is that when deals are prevalent, money's hard. When money's prevalent, deals are easy. So in 2010, a lot of people go like, oh man, next time there's a crash, I'm going to buy everything. And I'm like, no, you're not. Like,
not true.
Not true at all. You won't be able to find the money. Plus the building is burning down. Most people don't run towards a burning building. They run away, right? And if you're not the type to go do that and have confidence to go like, yeah, I'm good with this, then you're not going to do it. So most people are rear view investors. And so then at that moment in 2010, 11, 12, 13, 14, we didn't know. We had no freaking clue like that it was like a good market. Like, we had no clue. Right. And especially money being so expensive. But it was the wild, wild west in REO then, dude. It was insane. And so we had no idea what we were doing. We were just buying and flipping, buying and wholesaling, buying and transferring to other people, quick claim. There was so much shit we were doing back then creatively that you can't do today on some of the stuff. And then in 2014, I had a business partnership collapse, right? In February 2014, which I was like, then I'm never doing real estate again. Real estate sucks. Hate real estate. Done. This is after hundreds of deals by then. And then 6 months later, a buddy of mine convinces me to help him, do it. So I'm like, fine, I'll help you. And helped him a little bit. And then a fund that I used to JV with in 2013 hit me up wondering why I wasn't with my old business partners anymore. I was like, because those guys are meanies and I don't like them anymore. And then
feel that way about Mitch?
Are those the words you use? Tarl? They're meanies?
Absolutely not.
Yeah, right.
It was not a good breakup. And then today I'm actually friends with one of them again. The other one could burn in hell, but which he is living probably in hell right now. But he's still alive, but probably living not in the most positive way. So they convinced me to start like partnering with them again up in Seattle because I was already kind of helping my buddy. And I'm like, okay, fine. Like, and I did it. And then all of a sudden it was like 100 miles an hour again, not looking up. I had a JV deal with these guys to where I was getting half the equity with them. And we were just buying houses, right? But I was doing it all myself and running the operations and rebuilt my business again. And then about 7-8 months later, I ended that partnership and then just started doing it all on my own again. I never stopped until, tell you the whole story now, until the end of 2017, I had a quarter life crisis where I was like freaking out and all this crazy shit. And I was like, why am I doing this? I was burnt out and just flipping like crazy, had staff overhead. Like, I got into a position where we had to flip and, to feed the machine. And that was the worst feeling ever when I realized that. I never once looked up, never once asked why I was doing any of this, never once had a plan other than more. More was the plan. And that was it. A whole bunch of stuff happened at the end of 2017 that woke me up and made me like hate everything. And then my buddy Thatch Nguyen basically said to me at the time, he's like, have you ever thought about building what you want in your life first and then make your business fit that? Because most people build their business first and make their life fit the business. And then he said, why don't you figure out what you want in your life first and then make your business fit that? And it was like right place, right time, right person, because somebody else could have told me that and it would not been hit as easily. But the guy that I really respected, I was buddies with, say that. And then, like, it was like a lightning bolt, like right time too. I went through all the pain. How do I go? If you would have told me that 6 months earlier, I'd be like, you're dumb. My business is awesome, whatever. And then all the stuff that happened between then woke me up. And then I spent a few weeks with my wife on Saturdays, with butcher paper planning out what we actually wanted our life to be. And then we made an actual action plan to change our business to fit that. And we've never stopped since.
I think that's so important. I mean, we talk about that a lot. And I've watched so many other people do the same thing. They get into real estate for financial freedom or time freedom or to live their life on their terms. And then they end up building some machine that they can't get themselves out of. And they never ask themselves, well, why am I doing this in the first place?
Well, I think that the operative word is why. A lot of people don't stop and go, what is my why? We talk about in our tribe quite a bit, like you need to have a why first, because that's going to align everything else around it. And so if you don't start with a why, then you don't lift your head up and ask yourself the hard questions. So I'm curious, what did you do quickly? What did you do with your business to sort of align it with the butcher paper plan with your wife for your life?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is there's a big difference between what your business does and what you do as the owner, right? And that was the first delineation that I had to decide on. I was like, wait, my business can still go do all these things, but I don't have to do those things. And so the first thing was like, what's the no? Like, what is my hard and fast rules for me that I get to say no to? Which means that if the only way that it works to buy that property or do that business plan is that I have to do that thing, and it's one of those things that I say no to, that means we're not doing that thing, right? No matter how good the deal is, how shiny the penny is, how great the opportunity is, screw all that. Doesn't matter. It's a no, because that's not what I want in my life.
Tarl, what were those first couple things that you said that you were like, this is the no, this is the no, this is the no? Like, I won't swing a hammer. What was it? Well,
I never swung a hammer on a property, but I just want to throw that out there. 9019 Meadowway in Lakewood was the first property I ever screwed a light bulb in, and I legitimately felt like I was a failure as a human being when I did that, and an investor. I was like, what happened into my life that all of a sudden we failed so hard at this business that I'm like, I bought light bulbs for this property. Like, that's going to piss some people off. But that absolutely was after hundreds of deals. And I'm sitting there going like, what did I do wrong? Right. So no, I don't do that. Cause you're not an investor then. Right. Anyways, touch point, spoiler alert. I would say the very, very first no matter what is that I never have to go to the property. So so your business changes dramatically if you make the rule that's saying if the answer is I have to go to it, the answer is wrong, basically. And no, I get to go to the property if I want to, but it should never be that I have to. And so that's a no. So if the only way we're going to buy that deal is that I have to walk it, means that we're not buying that deal. Which then, because what was most important to me in my life was to be able to be completely remote if I wanted to be and travel wherever I wanted to go, be with my wife every day. So that was the first hardcore no, for sure. We also had to get our entire business to be able to work from our phones. So that I can travel. My wife and I wanted to spend every day together because we actually like each other, unlike some people, and that was really, really important to us. So that was another big thing too. So if I had to leave all the time, travel all the time, do whatever, and I couldn't bring her with me, then that doesn't make any sense to me. Which also led to her quitting her job because she came into my life when I already had my business, right? And so she had a great job that she loved and built her career from scratch. And so she had to quit her job. That was another thing.
I love I love this concept, setting boundaries. And then I want to go back like a minute or two when you said build the business to support the life you want versus the other way around. And I started asking my kids, because when I grew up, I think all of us, it was what do you want to do when you grow up? And then it was like, you choose something. You're like, I want to be an engineer in your case, or I want to be a pilot, or I want to be whatever that is. And then you like all of society just takes the life that thing gives you, versus being like, and like, I've changed the dialogue with my 10-year-old, because she started to think about like dreaming about these things. And I'm always like, well, what life do you want? And so now she's like, I want to travel. I want to do these things. I want to play sports. And I want to like all these, right? And so anyway, it's cool. It's cool to like have that flip and be like, hey buddy, like what life do you want? And then what do you want to build behind that to support that? And then beyond that, like you did, you like set boundaries and said no to so many things. And I know like in Travis's business, our business together, like we're always saying no, and people are always wondering, why in the hell are you saying no to these opportunities? Anyway, man, I love where this is going. So like, what are you working on now? What are you buying? What are you saying yes to, I guess?
Yeah, I think also like, just to kind of piggyback on that too, was that like, we also had to say no to more, right, as well. And it's so easy to get caught up in what other people are doing and hold yourself to what they're doing. And even though most of what's on social media is fake, which I try to make fun of all the time. But the point of it being is just like, don't measure yourself to anybody else. It's what do you want in your life? So we actually had to make less money. So that was the other aspect, was we wanted to keep more deals, right? Therefore, technically, I'm going to make less money. And if you're looking on an income level, when you're an addicted house flipper, such as I was, you're addicted to the income of weighing your money, right? Instead of counting it.
It's a dopamine hit. You close the deal, you get the big check, and then you want it again. Yeah, I get that.
When did that really click though? The difference between building wealth and making money?
That's a good question. I didn't keep my first rental until 2016, and that was after over 500 deals. So just to give you guys a food for thought on that one.
It's a little while. It took a little while.
Because it's like, I only bought, held, didn't sell. But it was my income was so low. So in some ways, we had kind of a similar timeline, but I bought and held, but my income was very low early on, because it's like a couple $100 a month of cash flow. And I'm like, I'm building wealth. I'm like equity, started slowly getting equity rich, but you're making all this money. And then you had to make
building income, which is different.
So Tarl, so you're making a crap load of money. Like that's a lot of flips, and there's big dopamine hits, big amounts of cash in your bank account. So what did you do with that money? Just go buy the next flip and the next flip and the next flip?
Yeah, and spend it too. So also just I don't want to mislead anybody on this, like as well, between mostly 2011, 12, 13, 14. You're not talking huge margins back then either, right? So making 10 grand on a house was a lot, like on flipping houses back then, 20 grand here and there. Like those were big margins back then on flips, especially when you're doing in markets like Phoenix and where we were in Vegas and a couple other markets we were at too. Like those margins you're buying a $90,000 house and fixing it up with 10, 15 grand and then putting it back on the market. So you're buying them at foreclosures and REIs. Like, so those kind of margins were like good. Right. So, cause you're still getting 10, 15, 20% on a deal, but you're buying it at 80 grand, 90 grand. Like, so there's, so I don't want to mislead that these are a bunch of $50,000 profit houses, cause that would be a lie, right? Big time. Some of these houses would make 5, 10 grand on, like, and it's just like, woohoo, right? Cause there's just like another and another and another. So, and then the fact that we did so many of those deals and kept none of them in 2012, 2013, like that's sucks, right? When you think about that. So yeah, that sucked. So that was a big wake up call too, when all of a sudden I'm like, damn it, like when I'm looking at properties that, especially, I remember this one property in West Seattle that I remember like buying at 100 something thousand, if I remember correctly, like 120, 130 as a foreclosure. And we sold it for 330. And I thought that like the people buying it were like psychotic, like how, cause they bid it up. We sold it listed at 295 and it sold for 331 or something like that. And we're like market setter, like number for that area. That house is like 1.1 right now. Like,
jeez. Yep.
And I'm like, these idiots bought this thing for 331. Like, I remember thinking that, right? I'm the idiot for not keeping it. We could have totally cash flowed that thing. So keep in mind. So I'm thinking about stuff like that for sure. Because by 2017, I had 5 or 6 rentals. By then, the 2017, sorry. Yeah, 6 or 7, something like that by then. So we had 3 in 2016. I think we had like 3 or 4 by the end of 2017. And I had a whole bunch that were like, I wanted to keep. Because it kind of, Yeah, I had a bunch in construction that I would plan on keeping. That was the hit. Was one of them that I wanted to keep super bad. I couldn't keep because we had all these projects being outlaid and we had all this overhead that looking at projections, which by the way, most house flippers don't do. They don't look at their finances. That's a big, big issue, by the way, for house flippers, which is why they actually fail. Most house flippers don't fail in the business because of something that they do on a property. They fail because they don't know how to manage their finances and they don't know how to project finances.
Well, it's such a cash flow intensive business. Yeah, you got to manage the cash flow.
They don't know any, they ignore the cash flow, even though they forget they're investors. They're supposed to make money on money, right? And their bank account's higher than it was when they started the project. Therefore, it's better, right? Like, so it's instead of financially planning it out. So I just went. So we were projecting, we did all the right things financially. And I saw that like, if I don't sell this project, because we get about like 80 grand out of it, like as far as profit plus the money I had into it, then 2 months later, I was going to be in a cash crunch, right? And 2 or 3 months, something like that. And I was like, I have to sell this thing, right? And because it's going to allow us to then like have that cash crunch hit, because they would have sold and then we'd get it, because it takes, 30, by then houses were selling really fast. And so we'd get that money in the next 60 days, basically, which would then cover a cash crunch. So I was so pissed when I saw that, because if we didn't sell it, it was going to hurt me later, because we had to feed the machine. So that was a big, big wake up call for me to like, or one of the many wake up calls. There's a whole bunch of other stuff happened too at the same time to like stack on me, to maybe go, I need to start keeping these things and figure out this. I never wanted to be in a position again where I had to sell something. And it sucks. So listen to everybody out there. It sucks to have to flip. Like, I'm just saying that out loud. It's great when it's all working out great. It sucks when it's not. So it's not a good feeling. So that led me to wanting to keep more houses, which was a big, big portion of our decision to switch to passive as much as possible. And realizing too that $1 million a year in income is awesome, but all the stuff I wanted to do, I can get done with $500,000 a year. And which means I can still flip some and keep the best from there. And
you could also take the depreciation off the holds, and offset the ordinary income off the flips and play that game too, which is nice when you blend the two together.
And by then I was already doing cash out refis and some other stuff, and I was getting better lending terms because of the rentals we kept, and I was starting to see the writing on the wall. I was like, by the next year I did my first 1031. I felt like an adult. Like all these things were starting to like, wow. This is like this is what Rich Dad Poor Dad talked about, was 1031s, right? He talked about cash. He didn't talk about flipping.
It's funny. So many people think that, maybe you correct me if I'm wrong, but people that are getting into the game think that real estate investing is flipping, and it's not investing. It's buying a lot of jobs and then getting into a situation where the business owns you, or the house that you're flipping owns you. And, we're all about time freedom, right? I mentioned it really quickly before, but the PT ratio is like, Mitch and I look at stuff all the time. Like, what's the profit to time investment on our part, right? That's sort of our non-negotiable. Oh, we can make $1 million developing this RV park, or we can go buy an in-place multifamily property and force appreciate it $1 million. So it is interesting how people have that misconception that flipping properties is an investment game, which it's, in my mind, it's not. It's a job.
Well, it should be an investment game, because people don't treat it that way. It's an investment game to me. I still flip houses, but but I'm looking at cash on cash return and all of the other stuff and everything, and my time invested into it versus other people's time invested into it. But so I can go back and forth on that a little bit. But there's a lot of people that do what you said, Travis, 100%.
Right.
But there is an investment level to it for sure.
So, Tarl, what does your business look like today, both on the flipping side, the buy and hold side, but also the event side? Because something kind of neat, you, like a lot of us, got our start from, reading Rich Dad Poor Dad, but I've also watched you interview Robert Kiyosaki, which has got to be a pretty cool full circle kind of experience for you from 20 years ago.
Yeah, it's different. He's definitely like, don't meet your heroes, right? Like, oh, did I say that a lot? Anyways, one of my closest friends in the world is Ken McElroy. And I told Ken maybe 2 years ago, I don't remember, like we were in a car together, and we were talking about Limitless, which is the expo him and I run together. And I was like, Ken, I'm so happy that I became friends with you and not Robert. So because Ken and I hit it off like this, like big time as far as personality growth, business, everything. Robert's a good dude and everything like that for sure. And like he's changed all our lives, like indirectly. And absolutely, and he's absolutely like, there's very few people that have had the biggest effect on the world on a financial education level than him, for sure. But you just meet people that you're like, you're like, hey, he was cool to meet. And then you meet people like Ken. For me, it's just like, I love this guy to death. I want to hang out with him all the time. So like, that's the difference.
Tarl, I can 100% relate, because the first time I ever met Robert Kiyosaki, I mean, I had never heard any audio of him. It was only the books. And so I felt like he was my rich dad. And then I met him in person, and I'm not going to repeat some of the things that were said, but I was like, Papa. That's like, so I get it.
Well, you just listening to people that have interviewed him on podcasts. So like, we had to cut out a lot of stuff.
Hey, he may have said some wild things at your events too, but regardless.
Yes. That's the best.
There's a few that come to mind that I won't repeat, but he has made a huge impact on people's lives, and he's someone that you've been able to connect with and interview. So I mean, that's got to be a pretty neat experience for you, and you run an event company too. Like, let's hear a little bit about that.
Well, I'll put a bow on the real estate side. I'm buying.
Sure.
I'm buying I didn't buy anything in 2023, and I shut down my Seattle stuff in 2022. So I was already tired of it. I already moved out right up Seattle area. Like I lived in Maui for most of COVID, and then I moved to Texas in 2022. And
COVID.
What was that?
What's COVID?
Yeah, I don't remember. Like it's everybody blanks out on that timeline, but but I lived in Maui during that timeline, and it was awesome. So and then I ended up buying. So now I buy a bunch of real estate in Savannah, Georgia, and Northwest Arkansas, but with the sole purpose of keeping as much of it as possible. But our mentality on it is keep the best, sell the rest. So we use the sell the rest to fund the keeping the best, right, kind of an aspect. So because there are properties that just don't pencil like truly as like really good cash flow, and they might be in areas that like, do you mean we're really here's what so this is something you guys might your passive people might enjoy. I think flipping houses makes you really better at real estate than somebody that just buys traditional landlord stuff. So if you look at what's going on with like multifamily and all that kind of stuff today, sure, like people are blaming cap rates. Sure, people are blaming, having short-term debt. They can't get out of it, all this kind of stuff. And they're now suddenly their property might operationally be rented out and having the rents, but their cap rates dropped and all this other stuff. At the end of the day, the people that are struggling the most is because of operations, right? It's truly because of operations, not because of the market or anything like that. They bought value add properties that they sucked at value adding, right? And they had capital calls issues. They couldn't run the rehab construction right. They couldn't get it done correctly, whatever. Operationally, they failed on property management. Something like that has actually, they got too protected by the fact that the market kept going up, right? And it bit them in the ass finally. So I believe if you get really good at, in my opinion, like flipping in a sense, you have to get good at rehabbing construction and operations. The biggest bottleneck for any house flipper besides cash flow management is that they avoid rehab construction and all that kind of stuff. And they want to get out of it as fast as possible instead of leaning into it and getting really good at the operations of the business. Same thing with buy and hold. Getting really good at property management is everything. Like in hiring the right property management, it can make or break everything in your business is that. So the operations is where people fail the most, right? So I think even if somebody wants to buy single family homes as a buy and hold investor, I'm like, learning the maintenance, rehab, all that kind of stuff will actually make you better than most people because you'll see a better deal than somebody else will, right? And a lot of landlords are scared of a messed up house that needs a lot of capex, right? Versus a house flipper is like, this is all I want to buy, right? And they just got to learn how to keep it, right? That's and not the big thing that I have to suffer from. Like we have a property in Savannah right now that we can sell right now, and we'll net like 75, 80 grand, right? Or I can refinance it, leave almost 50 grand into it, and get maybe $200 a month in cash flow, right? Not the best ROI, right, in the world. So that's going to be a really hard. Now, what am I doing? I'm keeping it. So because I don't need the investment return on the 75, 80 grand we get out of it that I pay taxes on. and this property's in a path of progress, and this property but I only have to keep it for 12 months and stuff, and then I can always 1031, which is what we're going to do. So do I leave 50 grand in there that I don't technically need, but I can also go flip a house and then go refill that coffers for it. And a lot of people get misled from guys like me back in 2018, 19, when I'm talking about like the infinite burr, right? You don't, just because you have to leave money in the deal doesn't mean it's a bad deal. Like most investing, you're supposed to leave money in the deal. Like you're investing your dollars, right? It's rare to get an infinite return, right? So, but I'm looking at it more on the tax side now. So I'm like, oh, I can leave this money in here. I can do this stuff. I can go get private money from somebody else. I can do all those other things. But then 12 months later, right, from now, I still have that 80 grand in equity plus my money that I originally invested, maybe more, right? Because maybe the market's done better. And now I could 1031 it tax free into something better. And that's where I'm really making my cash flow money, is the 1031s. So
in your BRRRRs, Tarl, you're two questions, or a question and a statement. On your BRRRRs, you're right. A lot of people think I get all my money back out. I get an infinite cash on cash return and I go do it again. Are you seeing, especially in the rate environment, when you're, by the way, BRRRR stands for
rehab, rent, refinance, repeat.
Thank you. And was that you or Brandon that came up with that term?
Brandon came up with the acronym of it. I made a lot of videos on YouTube about it, but
yeah. Okay. So that's are you getting most of your capital out of these deals, or are you leaving half in, or okay?
Yeah. Back in the day, I got all my money out a lot of the times, right? And I'd want a 25% return on any of the money I left in the deal, or else I flipped it. Now I'm like, does it cash flow and do I like it? Right. And so if I can get a cash flow out of it, and the property has a long-term path of progress opportunity on it and things that I'm like excited about, and I don't need the money, then yeah, I'm keeping it. Right.
You'll make way more money on the equity if it's in the path of progress. And then when you're 1031 exchanging this, so by the way, 1031 exchange, for those of you that don't know, is you basically can sell the property, roll the proceeds of the profit into a bigger property, usually getting more cash flow and not pay. It's technically you're deferring capital gains. Are you rolling these into larger single family portfolios of single families, multifamily? Like, are you staying solely in the single family game and just 1031 into other homes?
No, it just depends. Like, because the part of it's like, you don't have to invest in the same market either, right? Like, so it's a lot easier to invest. It is tremendously easier to take 200 grand cash and just go find a property that's already like in A class, good to go, and put a down payment on it. It's like way simpler. But I'm not going to go take $200,000 cash to go do that unless it's a 1031, right? And because I could take that 200K cash and turn it into $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 cash flipping houses, or building equity and forcing it into to deals, and then tax-free money, move it over to something else. So this is what hanging out with Ken McElroy has taught me, by the way, like all the time, because this is all he does. And so, because he's always thinking of the tax, right? I just paid the tax, right? But to answer your question on that, a lot of tax. So I like mixed use. Mixed use is great. I love mixed use in the right areas. That's commercial on the bottom and like residential on top. Like, I'm a big fan of that. So I typically almost all my 1031s have gone into some sort of like small multi, like a duplex through triplex, whatever, or mostly mixed use buildings, right, in a specific area that I like a lot. And those are all, because it's a math equation. Like right now I'm selling 2 of my duplexes in Tacoma, Washington right now. They're already sold, like they close in the next 2 weeks. And I'll get about $500,000 out of both of those, right? Because I've had these properties for a long time. It's a math equation on equity, right? So you have your ROI on the money that you left in there, which I already got out because I already did refinances a while ago or whatever. So I have no money into these deals, but I'll get $500,000 or so out of these 2 duplexes. So, but my ROI on my equity sucked by them. So mathematically, I was getting about a 3% return on that $500,000 of equity.
Your cash on equity, 3%
cash on equity, exactly, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm getting like 3% on that, right? So I'm like, okay, can I take this $500,000 and get 8%? Right? Can I get this $500,000 and get 9%? Can I get this? Like, that's what I'm more looking at. So if I'm netting $3,000 or $1,000 a month, let's say in cash flow, can I turn that into $2,000 a month in cash flow with that same equity moving it somewhere else? So that math equation is what I'm more interested in right now. But that only happens if you keep the properties, right? That doesn't happen if you flip the properties. And so because each one of those duplexes, I would have made about 30, 40 grand on if I flipped them back when I rehabbed them. And instead of keeping them, I've literally pulled out cash out. And I'm also like now selling these things for a bunch of money.
By the way, you pull out cash out tax free too. A lot of people forget that when you're putting debt on, and tapping equity. It's a tax save. It's your number one expense. I love that you said that. Like Ken's always talking about, because if you tally up the amount of tax you pay over your lifetime, it'd make you want to barf and cry.
The only caveat I would say to put a bow on this too is that like that's all great if you don't need the profit out of the deal, and that's why it's okay. And that's why I'm like, yeah, flip, whatever, do what you can. But if it's a property,
means to an end.
Correct. Our entire measurement is, will my future self hate me for selling this? That is absolutely the measurement. Like it's all subjective, right? But there is objective math. There's absolutely objective math. You have to be objective 1000% on all this stuff. And then I add one more question, which is, will my future self love me or hate me on this one, right? And if my future self is like, dude, I'm going to be so pissed if you sell this, then I'm like, okay, I got to do everything I can to keep this one. So, because there are deals that I hate by the time we're done fixing them up, that my future self would hate me for leaving this house in my life, kind of a thing. So you just sell them, right? Get rid of them.
Well, I do like your strategy though, like, because I mean, we all took different routes to like build a portfolio, and I know Gabe, like you like bought everything, held everything, and you were poor for a long time, like poor as far as cash flow goes. But then I talk to people who are like, look, I can't do that because I have like a family and I like have, I'm used to making some money or whatever. So I think there's some merit to like fast money and freedom money, where it's like, oh, I'm going to go flip 2-3 houses, then I'm going to buy one freedom asset or whatever that ratio is. Combining those strategies can be really powerful. But I think more and more people in our elite mastermind are choosing that too, because like they're like, look, like I don't have a lot of capital right now, and I like got to make money because I got a family, but I also want to build a portfolio. So how do I sort of go both routes? Yeah,
I love that, and I agree with that. I had a conversation with a dude the other day that him and his wife make a lot of money, and but they work so much, right? They have W-2s, they make a lot of money
and pay a lot of taxes.
They pay a lot of taxes, but like they have a very, very high 6 figures between the two, like very high, like almost a 7. And their answer to freedom is to get out of their jobs and go flip houses to replace that income. And I'm like, that is the worst idea if your idea is to go get freedom in your life. Like, you're going to work more than you probably work now to make that same money, right? Especially in the markets they go in. So they're shifting their strategy a bit, but because typically if you're high net worth like that, you also have high net worth friends. I'm like, well, why don't you instead go get your high net worth friends and go private equity with people instead, and JV with them, where you're providing the money with you and your high net worth friends, and have somebody else be the operator and go flip the houses. But
I see that all the time. Like you see physicians or the people that make a ton of money, like just stay where you're at for now, funnel it into long-term freedom properties, cash flow properties. I have a buddy of mine who is one of the largest he's been on our show here in Sacramento, huge house flipper, but he makes a ton of money, multi-7 figures a year, and funnels it all into like Class B multifamily properties in like Memphis or something. And I love the two strategies. I like the strategies, how they interlock with each other when it comes to a tax strategy as well. I love that. I think it's smart.
Right. As long as you don't mess up, it all works. But,
hey man, it happens. Yeah. Like, especially right now, there's a lot of people, the tide's gone out and people are in pain right now. So totally. you learn some hard lessons in times like this. I
know Gabe was softballing me to talk about the events company a little bit too, earlier. But
let's hear it.
Yeah,
I love
let's hear about the events, because I think running an event is not easy. I've been to a lot of events, and some are better than others, and I genuinely, the Limitless event is one of my favorite events that I've gone to, and you get a wide range of quality guest speakers and breakout rooms and the such. So yeah, maybe it's a softball question, but I genuinely am interested on, why did you start an event company? What do you enjoy about it? How's that side of the business going?
The short story is that we started a meetup in 2016, and that led to the events company. Eventually, I was like, these meetups suck. Let's do our own meetup. And then we had 110 people show up to our first meetup, and we did the meetup so we could get deals, basically. So we wanted to, we loved educating, and I loved educating and networking. But then the justify doing all the work to do the meetup was like, oh, we can find the 20-year-old Tarl that we can then go get the deal from when a blind squirrel finds a nut. So we just got to make sure they know that we're ready to buy when they find something and help them out. So it started with that. then it slowly progressed into like doing expos and conferences and all the stuff that I owned and I ran. But it was all Pacific Northwest. Brandon Turner and I created the Maui Real Estate Mastermind.
That's how we met you in Sedona.
Yeah. And that was like our first like partnership event that we did with somebody was that. And we did that in 2019. And then 2020, I did a big expo that happened to be virtually for some reason. We couldn't do that one in person in 2020 for some reason. It's weird. I don't remember why, but, and then I shut it down after that. I did some more masterminds with Brandon and everything. And then in January 2022, I'm in Laguna, California, with Ken. By the way, all my best friends I met because of my events company. I just want to throw that out there. All you guys I met because of the events company. Like, so like, you talk about like one of the cool things about doing events is that if you're not doing it to go make money and you're doing it, now we make money. I just want to throw that out there. But if that's not the sole purpose to doing it, like, dude, I meet so many cool people because of it. And, that's how Ken and I met, Brandon and I met all you guys, right? Like it was because of me starting an event business, right? And starting to do meetups one time. So it's great. It's awesome. And then so anyways, Ken and I are at a bar in Laguna, at a conference together, right? Neither one of us wanted to be there. And it was a private equity conference thing that I decided to go to. And Ken was, decided to go to as well. And then, I was complaining about how my team wanted to do another expo. We used to do an expo called the Big Badass Real Estate Wealth Expo in Seattle, Washington. We'd have, 1,100 people plus be there every single year and stuff. And I didn't want to do it, even though we had a contract to do it in Scottsdale, because I still will never do an event again in Seattle after 2021. And what happened to me in 2021 running an event in Seattle? That Gabe, you were at, actually. I'm pretty sure you were.
Yeah, I wasn't.
Yeah. I got on stage and we had like the shackles had been released on Seattle in 2021. And my team's like, we got to get back to the event game here. I'm like, oh, sweet, we'll do it. Why not? Like, let everybody know who owns the event space in Seattle for real estate. And because people started popping up again doing events. I'm like, cool. So we did a big thing. We call it the relaunch extravaganza for our meetups, which was fixated on real estate. And we had 450 people show up there, all local, right? Because we were only marketed local because it was for our meetup, right? At Gabe, there was a one-day conference, right? It was a pre-day party Friday night with a one-day conference. That was just a fun, cool time. It was great. It's great to see everybody. Like, hadn't seen everybody forever because they've been shuttered in Seattle because Seattle was in quarantine for 2 years or whatever. And I get on like that Friday of the event, the governor of Washington came out and said, you've all been bad boys and girls. Starting Monday, we're going back to no more than 10 people allowed to be together in the mask policy again. Starting that Monday, right? My event was that Friday, Saturday. So if I had scheduled this the following week, right, I would have been out like 40, 50 grand for running the event because we wouldn't have been able to legally to host it, right? So I got on stage and I was like, this is supposed to be a relaunch. This is now a going away party. I am never doing an event in Seattle ever again. And I still keep that promise. So anyways, we moved it to Scottsdale. So that's how we moved to Scottsdale. And I was bitching to Ken about that, about how I didn't want to do the expo again. And he's like, then he came up with like, hey, have you ever thought of doing something with financial education? I've thought about doing that before. I don't know how to do that. Can we maybe work together on something like that? And then I got super stoked and excited. And we started BSing about that. And the very next morning, I got on the phone with him. And I'm like, are we going to do this? And he's like, can you guys bleep out words on stuff?
Yeah.
He's like, let's fucking do this. And I'm like,
we won't bleep that out though. We won't.
Yeah. When Ken McElroy says that though, you're like, oh, okay, let's go.
Yeah. That was like when he said
that's like
that,
epic.
I'm like,
yeah,
let's go. Right. And
we're
I immediately got on the phone with him and called my team. Like immediately, I'm
that's
like,
so cool.
this. Like, this is, and so that's how the Limitless was born. My team and I came up, or Serena, who's on my team, she came up with the term Limitless Financial Freedom Expo. And then 4 months later, we had, it's like 1,100 people there, like 4 months later.
Wow. For
the very first one, like going from zero to that at a short period of time. And then year 2, we had 1,760 or something like that. And this is year 3 right now, happening at the end of August in Dallas at the Gaylord Texan. And so it's just been great. We don't sell from the stage. It's all about financial education. Real estate's an element of it, right? It's about business ownership, entrepreneurship, financial education, financial freedom. real estate's an aspect of all of that. So there's definitely a real estate element for sure throughout it. Macroeconomics, what's going on in the world today? Like, how do you like take advantage? There's too much negative doom and gloom. So a lot of it's like, cool. Yes, a lot of negative shit happening right now, but during disruption, that's the time to make money. So how do you take advantage of it for you and your family instead of hiding underneath a rock, right? Away from missing the boat, right? So there's always an opportunity somewhere. And that's what Limitless is all about.
How can people that are listening, how can they sign up for Limitless? How can they follow you?
Yeah. So like right now, you can go to limitlessexpo.com, right? And, tickets are on sale. They always go up. We will launch a virtual ticket here soon, for those of you guys that want to be virtual, but, and then you can use like discount code. I've got a bunch of them out there, like Tarl 20, I think is one of them, or that one doesn't work. Use Tarl 10, right? Or I can give you guys a discount code and you put it in the show notes. Like it's up to you guys. But like,
let's do that.
We'll figure out something.
Yeah, let's figure it out. That's awesome.
Right? Like but that's all good. We'll give you guys like absolute discount to you and your followers and members and stuff like that. And then for me, tarlyarber.com, I give a lot of free stuff away now on that. I spent my entire career never having a website for myself, and in the last like 6 months we made one, or 7 months or whatever it was. So I give a lot of free stuff away on there. So like my profit and loss spreadsheets, like videos, and it's all there. How I take photos of properties and why, and like how to never go to a property again. It's all free. It's all on there.
I got we had 2 questions. I'll ask the second to last question. And then Gabe, if you want to get Tarl out of here with the final 0 question.
I thought we got rid of the last question.
No, we modified it.
The who's the better looking? Who's the
no, not that one. We've all, it was unanimous. I was the best looking.
You kept beating us, Gabe, so we took that one away.
Yeah. All right,
yeah. But hold on. I could wash my clothes on Gabe's stomach, so that's all I.
That's true. That's true.
We know Tarl. Damn it, we know that. Okay.
I was just making sure Travis wasn't bringing that question back.
No.
That one died a while ago.
We got tired of everybody saying Gabe. Actually, right. That got old. No. So Tarl, how many units are you holding now? What's your goal over the next 5 years? Like, what's the end game on all this, or the end game in general? Are you going to like build it up to a certain amount? Are you going to retire? Are you like us? We can never quite retire. So what are you holding now? What's the end game? And then we'll let Gabe ask the final question.
Yeah. So if you include like I have a partnership with 2 other dudes, where we have 27 houses in that one. And then include my personal portfolio, it's a little over 30 doors, but the doors include like a 5 unit and stuff that I have as well.
Sure.
And then I have like 2 other partnerships and JVs with, where I'm 50-50 with 2 other groups and stuff like that. Where I have about 6 with one. And then, I think we're down to 4 on the other one, if I remember correctly. And then, so whatever that equals out to, so 50 plus and all that. And then right now we're buying in all the Savannah stuff. And so we just start keeping those, so that's going to build up. I want to get to the Savannah, Georgia area specifically. I want to get to at least holding 30 plus, before the end of the year, is where our goal is on that. And then that area. And what's the other question?
Well, it's what's the end game? You're going to build it all up, stop flipping one day and just cash flow your way into the sunset on the cash flow horse, or?
No, because Gabe's been part of it. Actually, all 3 of you guys have been part of this when we do the, Vivid Vision.
We do it here in the tribe too for our elites.
I've never been a Brandon on any of that stuff. I've always been I wake up and what's my day look like as far as, it's always that, which is, it has nothing to do with retirement. It has everything to do with I wake up, I'm with my family, and my day has purpose in what's on my highest and best is, and my highest and best changes based on what I want and where I'm at and whatnot. And it's more of just being effective and peaceful in my life at the same time.
Present.
I love
it.
Present.
Very present. Very,
I love that.
Present.
Yeah, you're right. Because vivid vision, goal setting, you're never present. You're always looking out.
Yeah, I can't tell you what I want in 3 years because it might change, right?
That's very similar to Mitch. Mitch thinks like that.
Very similar.
I love hearing you. I love hearing you say that. It makes perfect sense.
But I like the day thing because otherwise, I had huge goals for a long time, but it's today was a means to an end. So I'd burn a day for some other day versus anyway. Yeah, I like that. I like that philosophy for sure.
Yeah, I'm big. I'm not a time blocker on time. I'm a time blocker on days. I have very hard rules on my Fridays. I don't do meetings. Wednesday I don't do meetings. There's I don't work on Friday unless it's leading up to Limitless. Saturday I don't work ever. Sunday I like to work. But it's on these specific things. I'm more like that. And then, there's my favorite person I follow is Jocko Willink, and Jocko's discipline equals freedom. And you're like, how can you have freedom with discipline? Like, that's how you get freedom, is that you have like, you're not reacting to your life, right? You're actually like, you have a process for it. And I add one more part about being the present moment. Like, I want to be absolutely present with this. Like, I'm not thinking about what I'm doing after this. Like, how do I live that way? Like, this is what's in my schedule, is this, right? We're talking to you guys. I can think about what I'm doing in my schedule after this because it's in my schedule. So I can deal with it then, which builds freedom. So I don't know. That's my entire philosophy.
I can completely relate to that. I love hearing you say that. All right. Our final question that we ask on the 0 to 100 podcast show, you say you're sitting on your buddy's couch and you've lost it all. You've lost your net worth. You've lost your network. What's your first move? What do you do that day, that week, that month? What's the first action you take? Oh,
I'd become a firefighter.
Yeah.
I love that answer. It's like, did not see that coming.
I was expecting. I didn't expect. I didn't anticipate an answer, but it wasn't that.
No, I'm not mostly joking. I'm mostly serious about like, I'm like, cool. That gives me the freedom now to go do all the search and rescue stuff that I love doing volunteer wise anyways. Right. And then I was just like, all right, cool. Like, I grew up broke. We can go back to that. And then I'll get my head. There's probably a reason I lost it all, right? Like, at that time. So I know I'm not going to get all like fired up and motivated to go back to the grind, because I probably went through a massive grind to like stop myself from losing it all at some point. So I would probably need a break. Richmond, I would go do what I actually love doing, which is ski patrol, search and rescue, EMT, emergency medicine, find a way to pay the bills, right? Doing stuff like that. And then I can rethink and recoup to go after it another time. But that's my immediate reaction, actually.
That's great. That's great. That's a great answer. Oh, Tarl, I appreciate having you on, man. It's been a while since we've got to connect and hang out. So I appreciate you being on here, and I look forward to the next time that we get to spend some time together.
Appreciate you guys. Thank you.